Hello, my name is Alex Milosevic, and today I will be talking about the social thinking curriculum that was developed by Michelle Garcia Winner. As stated on her website on socialthinking.com, Michelle Garcia Winner coined the term social thinking about 15 years ago and developed the related treatment approach for individuals with high functioning autism, Asperger's syndrome, nonverbal learning disability, ADHD, and even hyperlexia, although this curriculum is not limited to any of these disorders. She has spoken at many of her conventions about social thinking as it relates to social relationships and interactions. In fact, much of the growth of social thinking, both nationally and internationally, can be attributed to its use by professionals, parents, and caregivers who modify strategies for their students and settings. I will first go ahead and do an overview of what social thinking is as defined by Michelle Garcia Winner. She says that social thinking is the idea that we think about the individuals we interact with on a daily basis. How we think about others affects how we behave, which in turn affects how others respond to us. Positive or negative responses from others can affect our own emotions and relationships that we develop in the future across social contexts. It can also include sharing a space effectively and understanding the perspective and intentions of others that we speak with regularly. The social thinking curriculum is a large curriculum that kind of discusses many vocabulary words and strategies and steps that are useful for the types of students that I discussed earlier. Today I'll actually be doing an overview of what is, I feel, the most important concepts and information that she speaks about on her website, and also at the end give a reference to some of the things that I've used and found helpful where you could actually delve in more to the social thinking curriculum and find out more information about it. So the first thing that I will go ahead and talk about would be how the social thinking strategies actually can help these individuals and students by teaching them three main things. The first is it'll teach the student how to understand how their own social mind works and why they and others react a certain way. The second thing it'll teach them would be how their behaviors affect the way others perceive and respond to them. And then the third is taking into consideration how others perceive and respond to them, how those things can affect their own emotions and relationships with others across social settings. The next thing she speaks about is the 4 steps of communication. So the first step in communicating is thinking about the person or persons that you intend on communicating with. This is by considering their thoughts, emotions, motives, experiences, and even personality to better establish successful communication with them. The second would be to establish a physical presence. This can be done by calling the person's name to catch their attention or walking up to them and actually tapping them on the shoulder to gain their attention. The third step is to use your eyes to become aware of the person and the environment. This is good for obvious reasons about getting more information about the environment to add on to the context of the message throughout your communication. Also, eyes are good to show people that you're paying attention and that you're interested in what they're either doing or saying, but it also lets them know what you're thinking about. And the fourth step would be to use your language to show others that you're interested in them. This can be done by asking another person about questions that include their hobbies or questions about school, any type of topic that might be of interest to you or the other person, and then making related comments that are appropriate. Also, adjusting what you say based on how you think the other person will respond is really important in this fourth step. Now I will go into discussing some of the main concepts that she talks about in her social thinking curriculum, which are all vocabulary words that she uses throughout her website. So the first one is the ILAUGH model, which is spelled ILAUGH, and that's the ILAUGH model, which is an acronym that was developed by Michelle Garcia Winner to describe the different affected areas that can contribute to a student's overall social cognitive deficits. And this is actually really helpful because it kind of provides an informal assessment tool that clinicians would be able to use in order to guide us through determining the students' strengths and weaknesses, which would give us information to develop and create some type of treatment goals for the future once they start receiving intervention. So the first letter of the acronym would be I, which stands for Initiation of Language. Initiation of language, as defined by Michelle Garcia Winner, would be the ability to initiate both verbal and nonverbal expressive language for the purpose of communicating a variety of messages, including commenting, requesting, greeting, seeking information, and socializing with adults and peers. Usually, students with social cognitive deficits have difficulty asking for help or asking for clarification on an assignment, for example, or initiating the appropriate social entrance and exits with other people. And what I found really helpful was in one of her books, she actually goes through how each of these components of the ILAF model actually would affect social interaction, how it affects the student in the classroom, and also what we might be able to do as clinicians within our session, but also being able to recommend for teachers to be able to use in their classroom. So initiation of language obviously in the classroom would affect them because they wouldn't be able to go ahead and ask for clarification. They wouldn't be able to ask for help, and even in group participation or classroom discussions, it'd be hard for them to initiate and contribute their type of ideas if they have problems in this area. What we can do as SLPs is basically model the appropriate initiation of language and showing them how you can raise your hand to initiate an idea or what it would look like during possibly a role play scenario. L is listening with eyes and brain. And this is described as more than just taking in auditory information, but it also requires the person to integrate information he or she sees in context, along with noticing nonverbal cues of the other people in the group to fully interpret the spoken or unspoken language. This would affect the child, their social interaction, because they're not able to observe other people's social cues, and they might not actually be able to process the meaning of the other person's message. It would affect them in the classroom because they're not easily able to process the meaning of spoken messages, and also having poor eye contact would diminish their ability to really read somebody's facial cues, which could give us a lot of information on the message that they're giving to us. What we can do or recommend to teachers would be to use visual strategies to help alleviate the auditory overload, and also teaching them how we use our body and eyes in order for us to listen. A stands for abstract and inferential language and communication. This is described as being able to interpret adequately. You must be able to make flexibly smart guesses about the intended meaning of the message, which could be shown through nonverbal or verbal communication. This could affect someone's social interaction because they might not be able to infer the meaning from social cues or decipher the meaning of words or language. It could affect a student in the classroom because there's limited information or ability to infer meaning from books or a teacher's lecture or classroom discussions. So the next one of the ILAF model would be U, which is understanding perspective. And this is kind of a big area that children on the spectrum and even other children in different disorders have a hard time with, and it's the most affected area. This is the ability to understand the emotions, thoughts, beliefs, motives, intentions, and personality of yourself as well as others. The ability to take perspective is key to participation at any type of group setting, whether it's social or academic. This affects social interaction for these children because they have difficulty recognizing and incorporating other people's perspectives to regulate social relationships or just to share space effectively. How it could affect them in the classroom is that they may have difficulty understanding the perspective of characters that they're reading about, They might have difficulty understanding the perspective of different people's viewpoints during a classroom discussion, and they might have difficulty working in smaller or larger groups. What we can do is work with the student to learn cognitively about this concept and stress thinking about others in the classroom. G stands for Gestalt processing, or in other words, getting the bigger picture. This is described as the ability to take in information you have and understand it in terms of a larger concept. A child with secondary behaviors on focusing on smaller, less important details that may or may not relate to the core concept being discussed. This is going to affect their social interaction because they're not going to be good at tracking how language fits into an overall larger concept that's being discussed, and they may make off-topic comments. It'll affect them in the classroom if they have deficits with Gestalt processing by being able to attend to smaller details but missing the underlying concept of the assignment. They might have difficulty staying with the concept of the group work or cooperative learning. What we can do is provide graphic organizers to break information down into visual concrete parts and to overtly teach how to identify the main idea or main concept of an assignment or book. And the last letter in the ILAF acronym would be H, which stands for humor and human relatedness. This actually stands for and is described that many students have social cognitive deficits and have an individual sense of humor, but they feel anxiety when they do not understand the humor of others. Many of the clients, they might use humor inappropriately and not be able to understand timing and subject matter or the subjective quality of humor. Others may actually not even comprehend it at all and not attempt to use it within social interactions. Incorporation of appropriate humor can actually serve to ease tension and promote increased participation in social activities, which could lead to more effective social learning. If a child has a deficit in humor and human relatedness, this could affect their social interaction because they might not be able to understand if they're being laughed at or laughed with. It also could result in difficulty relating to others. How it could affect them in the classroom would be that the student may produce inappropriate humor in the classroom as an effort to engage with others, but again, it might not be appropriate for every student. What we could do or recommend to teachers is to teach that student that humor has a time, a place, and a person to be able to tell certain jokes with, and to differentiate between friendly jokes and from mean-spirited teasing. So that was the ILAF model. And now I'll go into several basic vocabulary words that she goes into on her website and in her book. So the next main concept would be whole body listening. And whole body listening is the idea that the whole body, which is the eyes, ears, mouth, hands, feet, bottom, and brain, need to be focused in on the group in order to listen and to demonstrate that you're an active listener while others are speaking. So what I found has been really helpful for me, being in the social skills clinic, but also using it throughout my student teaching experience and even externship, is this visual representation of whole body listening. So this is something that you can actually find online with a quick search on whole body listening, but I found it to be really effective with giving them the maximal amount of cues in the beginning, which would be the verbal cues, and showing them this, but then later fading it out to only having to point to a certain body part that's not being within the group or that's not using their whole body listening. And that way it's less disruptive and you're able to just kind of point out which body parts need to join the group back in that activity. So I found this really helpful. The next thing would be thinking with your eyes. Your eyes are tools that help you figure out your environment and what other people might be thinking about. The emphasis is placed on the student to become a good observer and to make smart guesses about what other people might be thinking, which could result in them changing their own thinking, their own words, or behaviors. So this is kind of what I mentioned earlier as using your eyes as a tool to understand the person you're talking to and also the environment around you. The next larger two concepts would be expected versus unexpected behaviors. Expected behaviors are ones that are considered socially acceptable or follow concrete rules that are given at home or in the classroom. And by doing what is expected, we can keep others thinking good thoughts about us. And these behaviors are adapted depending on who we're with or where we are. And some examples of expected behaviors would be to face the teacher, making comments on what the group is talking about, using good eye contact, and raising your hand if you'd like to say something instead of interrupting somebody. Unexpected behaviors are behaviors that are not considered socially acceptable or do not follow concrete rules that were set forth. By participating in unexpected behaviors, the people around you may have uncomfortable, negative, or weird thoughts about that person. And some examples of unexpected behaviors would be if the child was lying on the floor instead of being at the table with the rest of the group, or having their body turned away from the group. Also saying things that don't pertain to what the group is discussing. Also, if someone asks them a question and they don't respond with at least that they need more time to think about that question, or that they don't know, or giving an appropriate response, that could be something that's unexpected if they don't answer. And also interrupting others while they're talking. So as SLPs, and what you could recommend for teachers to do is when a child is engaged in an unexpected or expected behavior, you can ask them what their emotions are during those times, and seeing the difference between expected behaviors, which might make others or yourself feel safe and happy and glad, whereas on the opposite end, if they're doing unexpected behaviors, it could make the people around them feel upset or sad or unsafe, and showing them the difference between how they'd like to feel and the feedback that they'd get during expected behaviors. And also what they recommend would be to videotape sessions so that you're able to play back for the student a situation that might have had an expected or an unexpected behavior in it, so that they'd be able to see how the situation was handled, what was said, and maybe provide some solutions of what they could have changed for future situations where unexpected behaviors arise. The next concept that Michelle Garcia Winner talks about in the social thinking curriculum is being a social detective. And she speaks about everyone being a social detective, meaning that we're using our eyes, ears, and brains constantly to figure out what others might be planning to do next, what they're presently doing, and decoding our communications partner's intent. The next idea is big problem versus little problem. She explains it as that not all problems that children encounter should result in the same reaction. Bigger problems call for stronger emotions and help from a peer or an adult, and little problems are called glitches and can be worked out if the child stays flexible. And I'll actually go into talking about flexible thinking a little bit later. The next concept that she speaks about is the idea of superflex and the unthinkables. And I'll only provide a basic definition of what these are, because I believe that someone else is actually going to be going into depth with specific unthinkables and what superflex, what his main goal is. So Superflex is a comic superhero that helps kids overcome the challenges that might arise in different social situations at home or at school. Superflex encourages flexible thinking in order to overcome an unthinkable character. An unthinkable is a comic character that tries to make people inflexible and have challenges like getting off topic, being stuck on a topic, getting really upset, or not giving others a turn. So Superflex is kind of the superhero that comes and saves the day when your brain gets taken over by an unthinkable character. The next term that she uses is flexible thinking. And flexible thinking is being able to interpret verbal and nonverbal information based on different points of view or different contexts. The next vocabulary word is 3 parts of play. And the first part is setting up, the second part is playing, and the third part is cleaning up. This concept highlights the idea that the longer it takes for a group or an individual child to set up or clean up, the less time they'd have to play. Many students take way too long setting up since they insist on things that have to be done a certain way. So usually these students with social cognitive deficits at a younger age would start to cry or protest if things weren't being done at their pace or being done as they desired at that moment. So play usually gives a really great opportunity for natural dilemmas to arise, like a student wanting another toy that someone else has, or disengaging themselves from the group to go play another activity, or even crashing a toy tower possibly that someone has just made. And there are many opportunities to discuss some of these various social thinking concepts while also having the student recognize their expectation as a group member. The next part is smart guesses, which is when we use all of our tools that would be including our eyes, ears, and brain to figure out things and then make the best guess based on the information that we have about the world around us. And a wacky guess is if we forget and don't think about what we know and see, and then we might make a random guess without the necessary information to make a better or educated guess about a situation or person. So this is basically the overview that I have for social thinking curriculum. Thank you for watching it. It was developed again by Michelle Garcia Winner. If you would like more information on the program to be able to utilize it within your sessions or throughout your clinical experience, I would definitely recommend and encourage you to visit her social thinking website, which is at socialthinking.com for further information. Thank you for watching.